Back in the late 1980s and early 90s, the sim genre of games exploded after the likes of SimCity. Amidst that increasingly saturated genre, the most intriguing of the bunch was Maxis's definitively different SimAnt. SimAnt put you in control of a small group of ants, with the goal of taking over a yard and defeating the rival red ants. The reason I bring that up is because there hasn't really been anything like SimAnt since SimAnt, and when I saw the first trailers for Empire of the Ants, I was hoping for something similar. Empire of the Ants is inspired by Bernard Werber's books of the same name and is a remake of an earlier 2000 video game adaptation. While the game uses the books as inspiration, most notably for how the ant perspective is portrayed, it ditches the plot of the book for one of its own makings. The plot throws you into the shoes of worker ant 100,000 and something. Instead of names, our ants are simply designated numbers and the scent knowledge of the colony from which they come. As a young ant, it's your job to travel from your colony to a sister colony, which is dealing with a surprise flood and a termite uprising, among other things. To do this, you'll have to immerse yourself in the basics of ant life, and wage war on all those who threaten your colony, while constantly scavenging in the world around you. Now, while I initially wanted to say Empire of the Ants is not anything like SimAnt and how disappointed I was, it's not a sentiment that would be true. Instead of an in-depth simulation of ant life, we have an exploration-focused RTS-light experience that relies on its sense of scale to constantly fill you with awe and wonder, even when the gameplay grows rote. Well, we've all probably stared at those long lines of insects weaving their way through our gardens, engaged in the constant expansion of their colony. It's one thing to view it all dispassionately from your porch. It's another thing entirely to view it from an ant's eye perspective, down on the trenches. It's easy to forget just how tiny these masters of the world are, until you're crawling all over the leaf of a flower and staring at the skull of a canine that makes a blue whale look tiny in comparison. Even more humbling is when you realize that, while you're slurping down a cold one, there are entire cities going to war underneath your feet. That impressive sense of scale is one of the game's strongest assets, and it's backed up by some of the most gorgeous and realistically rendered visuals I've seen. The developers have done an absolutely stunning job of recreating the illusion of nature in all its microscopic glory. From the complex terrain models with their exquisite textures, to the intricately detailed models of ants and other insects, the stunning lighting by day or night, and even almost missable details like subsurface scattering on the ants themselves in daylight. I've lost track of the amount of time that I'd simply stop and stare at the flood in a backyard while resting atop an exquisitely detailed branch as bees flew on by, or the times I'd be transfixed by the activity close to a nest as thousands upon thousands of ants went about their daily tasks of exploring and bringing back food to the colony, all the while firebugs or ladybugs crawled all over the adjacent trees, and it's all rendered with perfect performance on an Xbox Series X. I never experienced any noticeable performance drops, which was incredibly impressive when considering just how many insects are on screen at once, running across stones and foliage. The one visual trick I did notice, to keep the performance in check no doubt, is that until you're in combat, there isn't any collision detection between insects. They're still perfectly impressive when navigating the environment, and the visuals are seriously gobsmacking. It's a game that needs a photo mode stat. The big question, of course, is how does it play? I found it a great, laid-back, and sublime experience most of the time. The game breaks itself up into different mission types, from exploration to hunting, tactics, and full-scale warfare. It's the exploration and combat sequences that are by far the game's greatest strength, though. Exploration is by far the most laid-back affair as you scout the environment and mark off items of interest by throwing scent molecules at them, finding enemy hives, and food to feed your colony. One aspect that maybe needs some work is that being discovered by enemy units doesn't seem to have any repercussions, even when you're tasked with exploring by stealth. Meanwhile, hunting simply feels awkward in execution as you must jump at your prey to catch them. While your impressive Hulk-style leaps are great for covering large swathes of ground, it's not ideal for precision attacks. The combat sections are the most tactical and fun, though they usually contain an element of exploration as you first need to find resources to fund your war effort or find enemy hives and their resources to exploit. While the game is clearly inspired by the likes of Command & Conquer, its mechanics are more stripped back on the tactical side. You only have a handful of Legion types, which can be upgraded into veteran and elite units, along with support bugs and one super predator bug that you can breed. You're also only capable of controlling a small number of units in any altercation. Defeated units will automatically rebreed at their hive if you have resources, and eventually become usable again. The tactical elements are also simple, but no less effective with a rock-paper-scissors type approach. Each unit is strong or weak to another type, and an effective usage of melee warriors, acid-throwing gunners, and workers are the key to success. It may initially seem complicated given there are options for upgrading your nest while dealing with a limited number of chambers, but you can build up wooden defenses, expand your food and wood storage chambers, upgrade your units, and develop powers of a sort, such as scent explosions that send enemy units fleeing in terror. Typical RTS battles ensue between the need to explore and build up your resources, take over other nests, and continuously build up your own legions to prepare for the inevitable wave of enemies, some of which enforce a time limit. For the most part, Empire of the Ants is a rather laid-back affair, both during exploration and combat, providing a chill experience I really appreciated. But there were some difficulty spikes in the late game, and some missions that didn't provide me with enough feedback as to why I'd failed them. That said, the game does seem catered to a more casual RTS player. Rounding out the package is a multiplayer mode that either pits you in 1v1 battles or a 3-player free-for-all. The exact same mechanics apply here as in the campaign, and victory so far seems to come down to the fastest and more experienced players. I didn't find any performance issues here either, though I did have some trouble connecting to 3-player free-for-all matches. Experienced RTS players looking for a consistent challenge will likely find it here when pitted against another human being. Now, although Empire of the Ants may not be the SimAnt revival I was hoping for, it's still a gorgeous and enthrallingly laid-back RTS title that, at least, tries to be something different and a bit special in an otherwise familiar genre. And for me, it was a great experience overall.
If you've got this far, please consider giving the video a like and maybe subscribing to our channel, as it helps us grow.